Okay, in this video we're going to talk about applying different textures using matrix art to a surface of a piece of jewelry that you've designed. So in this instance what we're going to do is we're going to design a ring. So let's go to our ring rail and we'll just scroll down to maybe a size T. Pop the ring rail out there, F6, and we're going to add a profile. We might make that profile say 10mm by 2, and we'll change that profile shape maybe to say something like this one here, and hit enter. Sweep that, F6, and sweep on with history, and there is our ring. So let's just shade that up so we can see what we're looking at. Alright, so we've got our ring, and what we're going to do next is we're going to extract a surface, and to do that we're going to go into our solid menu and we're going to go to extract surface, and it will ask us which surface we want to extract, which is going to be the center one here, and we're going to hit enter. I usually like to put that onto a different layer color as well, just so we can differentiate it a little bit later on. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create UV curves from this this particular surface that we've extracted. So we're going to go into our curve menu and we're going to go to the second level of our curve menu and go to create UV curves. In the command line it'll say select the surface. It's going to be this. No, it'll be this. No, that's not it. Let's try that again. So select surface, that one there, and press enter. And that will give us that surface all laid out flat in the form of curves. Now what I like to do is I like to center this just to make it nice and neat. So we're just going to go to utilities, I'm going to go to center object and just center that up, and then I'm just going to move that up a little bit. Alright, so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to hide, select all of our ring here, I'm just going to hide that for the moment. And we're going to open up matrix art, select the curve and pop that into the curve menu. I also like to beef up the resolution to usually around 22. When you do that, just make sure that you hit update resolution button just there. And the next thing we're going to do, you can see the profile of this particular surface or mesh I should say matches this profile here. Well, we're going to change that to a flat, and now that that's flat we're just going to dictate the surface height at say 0.5 of a mil. Alright, so now that we've done that we can then go to the next stage and go to the picture menu, and we're going to load our bitmap. So we'll click on this button here and we'll select the bitmap. So I'm just going to select our little floor bitmap there. Zoom in there, you can see what's happening there. It's giving us, you know, the bitmap, and it's not tiled yet. Don't worry about that, we can do that in just a second. But we can control, just by using the sliders here, things like the height of that bitmap. So just bearing in mind that we've already set this this surface here to 0.5 of a mil, so anything on top of that, or anything that we use on this slider, is going to be on top or underneath that. Okay, so we might take that to say maybe 0.4. Alright, you can also increase things like the width and the height just by playing around with these different slider bars here, but we're going to keep that say about there. And the next thing we're going to do is, so that we can fill this entire area up with it, is we're just going to hit tile bitmap, just this button here, and that'll tile the entire piece for us. You can have a closer look there. It's a really good idea when you're selecting your bitmap that you make sure that it's, or if possible at least, make sure that it's seamless. With a bitmap like this, it's fairly random, so it's not too bad. but you know, with definite patterns, you might want to make sure that they all match up. So okay, the next thing we're going to do is, now that we're finished with that, we're going to go to Effects. And here is just where I like to just make the bitmap a little bit smoother. I usually like the bitmap attributes. I usually select both ends for that, but you can play around with it. Sometimes it makes a difference, other times it makes basically nothing, and in this instance here it's not really making any difference at all. I also like the blur amount. I usually like to put that on high, and what that tends to do is it smooths the mesh out a little bit more, and you can see that's made a big difference. Alright, so once we're happy with that, then if you wanted to, you could go into the sculpting section. I very rarely will use this when I'm creating textures, but if there's something here that you wanted to deposit in, maybe an area for a stone that was going to be, or a setting that was going to be in there, you could go ahead and do that, but I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. Once I'm finished with all that, I'm going to go to the area where it says Create Mesh. Now make sure that Capped is on. That's pretty important, particularly if you're growing the piece. Otherwise you'll end up with a hollowed out mesh, and that's no good. So we're just going to hit Create Mesh, and that will think about it for a little bit and create a nice mesh for us. Okay, and there's our mesh. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down Matrix Art. We don't need that open anymore. And let's just turn this on plastic so we can see what it is that we've got. And there's our mesh that we're going to apply to our new surface. Now what we'll do is we'll bring back our ring, and the next thing that we're going to do is I like to go to our surface menu, and I like to select Shrink Trimmed Surface, which is on the second level of the surface menu here, this one here. So select the trim surface to shrink. Well, it's going to be this one here. And the reason that we do that is so that the mesh that we're about to apply doesn't extend beyond the edges of where we want it to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our Utilities menu, and we're going to select Apply Mesh UVN. It will ask to select the mesh to apply, which is going to be obviously this one here. Press Enter, and select the surface, which is going to be our surface here, and press Enter. And there you have it. Now, as you can see, I've extended beyond where I really wanted to go, and that's probably due to the fact that I made the mesh so high. I should have probably taken that right down to maybe 0.1, 0.2 of a mil, and maybe extended it up a little bit more, and it wouldn't have necessarily extended beyond that. But you can see the effect there, that it's done, and it's all the way around. Another way that you could do this as well would be to use your SmartFlow transform. That may actually be a better way to do this. So let's actually try that. Let's select this mesh and let's delete it. Alright, and I'm just going to select this mesh here. I'm just going to hide that for a moment. Now, in Matrix 7, we have some really cool functions. I'm going to maybe get rid of this for a moment. I'll show you some of them. I'm going to go into our transform menu, and on the second level we're going to SmartFlow Auto Base. So click on that, select the destination to build the auto base from. Well, it's going to be that there. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to well, let's bring back our mesh, and let's go into SmartFlow. Select the base surface object, which is this one here, the destination surface, which is obviously this one here, and then we can select our mesh and literally just move it to where we want it to sit. Just say there, and that will apply that mesh. Now, to get around some of those other issues, let's go into our side viewport, because as you can see, this mesh is sitting basically on top of that surface. So let's take that down, and by doing that, that will definitely help with what we've got there. You can also see down the bottom there we've got this gap here. That's easy enough to fix. We can just go into the looking down viewport, and we can go to transform, scale 1D, select the mid, hold down your shift button, and we can just extend that out a little bit to there, and you should find that should help that up. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Alright, so there you have it. Basically using matrix art, doing it the old way that we used to do it by applying the UV mesh, or doing it the new way, which is using your SmartFlow transform tools. Frankly, this is a more powerful way to do it. I think it's probably the easier way, and it's probably a lot neater as well. You've got a lot more control over it. I hope that helps.